Hello YouTubers and welcome to another episode of the Australian Vlogs. Today, unfortunately, you could probably tell from the title, we're not going to be on the water, but we're going to get some interesting training in regardless. We've got the lads, Big Dog Jacko here. We've got Sam as well.
Big Dog Sam.
And Josh. We're going to do the workout today instead of on the water, unfortunately. Big Dog Jacko is getting it done. But I will be off the water just to give myself an extra day to be able to close my hand. So we're hopping on the bike to do a long, steady session. And Big Dog Jacko is, unfortunately, leaving me to go on the water. So now, time for me to get onto the bike for more than a couple of hours, so here we go. So it's now turned out that it's not just going to be a normal bike, we're going for a long one. Sam's scheduled for 4 hours.
Wow.
So I might join him for the entire thing. But in case I do, we have come prepared with some snacks. So we've got banana, gels, and some sweets as well. Just to keep us going, get some good music on, some good chat. The intensity of this, especially if we do a long 4 hours for Sam, and maybe for me, the intensity doesn't really have to be too high. It's all about getting in that low end zone intensity and just sitting in it and enjoying it and improving the cardio fitness. Unfortunately, tried to get on the watt bike and let me show you what's happened. I was like, oh, why is the seat so low? And you'll see even though the seat tightener adjuster is fully tight, it's not gripping onto the seat. So a previous user has loosened it off too much, or I'm not 100% sure how the watt bike works on that. So it doesn't secure the seat in position. So what we're going to do is basically have to take the shell off the watt bike, find a little part, put the little part back on, and put the shell back on. Always an adventure. Unfortunately, we've not got the right tools to be able to take apart the watt bike to then basically repair said watt bike. We need an extra long Torx screwdriver, but we don't have one, unfortunately. So we have another option. And this is the other option. Got a couple of static bikes here at the place I'm staying. So Sam and I are gonna enjoy a little bit of a different view. Maybe get some movies on the TV and get on the bikes here. Oh, you. And we're off. Not long started with the bicycle, and we've decided, or I've decided, Sam has to be here anyway on the bike, so he's joining in too. Going to do a Q&A. So I've put on my Instagram a little bit of ask me anything, ask me some questions to see what the Yam Squad wants to know. And before we start the Q&A officially, we can talk about the fueling strategy. So we've calculated that 4 sweeties per 20 minutes?
Every 20 minutes.
Every 20 minutes should be enough carbs to continuously fuel us through this long bike. Basically, the time limit of the bike is when Anthony comes back and gets ready to go to breakfast. So it could be 4 hours, it could be 3, it might be 2, but either way, regardless, having that extra fuel will really benefit us, especially as we progress into the 90, as I drop a sweet 90 plus minutes.
Especially with this heat.
Especially no AC, we've got some fans on, but in the heat can really make your heart rate go higher, make you spend more energy for the same relatively low effort. So just keep an eye on that, and keeping an eye on the fueling and hydration. First question of the Q&A from Surya Patel. How many times a day should I be completing long-term steady state? Well, what is long-term steady state? I'm not 100% sure on that term, but I'm going to assume it's sessions that you're doing at steady state pace for a long period of time, both in over weeks and months, and the general sessions are quite long. But also, what is steady state pace? A lot of people have different opinions on this, but for me, steady state is a pace that you can do for a long period of time without emptying the tank or emptying the glycogen stores. So yes, you can hold a certain pace for say an hour, or you can hold many paces for an hour, but for me the steady state is generally on the lower intensity. And it ties up with another question that was about zone 2. What is zone 2? And I would generally line zone 2 up with steady state. And how many times a day should you be performing this type of training? It's a little bit of a how long is a piece of string question, but generally one session of that per day is going to do you really, really well. It's all about being consistent over a longer period of time, weeks and months, rather than doing one long piece once a week or once a month. So if you're able to do 30 minutes most days, that's going to do you better than 60 minutes or 90 minutes once a week. Next question from Abdel: what to eat before a 2K race? Do you want to take this one?
Well, as a junior, love a little bit of fast-acting carbohydrates, so like a handful of lollies or a gel. I like the science and sport ones because they're
Informed sport
certified, so they're
tested.
very safe to use. Little bit of caffeine, not too much because it's not great for you.
And with that as well, like any fuel, like Sam and I'll have different sort of,
Needs.
like we'll have similar things to eat, but yeah, different needs and also different abilities to stomach things, and you'll be different too. So
Like I know I can stomach 120 grams of carbohydrates in one go.
yeah, which is
Like 4 of those.
4 of these, yeah.
So I have a beta fuel, which is 40 grams of carbohydrates, 30 minutes before a race. But I will also have a bottle of Gatorade and some electrolytes and all that stuff. But not necessarily that you need all of those carbs for the race. It's also about the ability to back up to your next race.
Yeah, if you've got one flat out race, the fueling, yes, it obviously matters, but generally the fuel you'll be using for that race is from meals prior, maybe even the day prior.
It's not long enough that you need to do a ridiculous carb load.
And as Sam mentioned, so this is a gel, a supplement, you mentioned caffeine, some beta fuel stuff, all supplements. And someone else asked the question about supplements, what supplements do you use? I do recommend, if you are going to look at different supplements, make sure you're talking to a nutritionist, talking to people that are in the know about what you should use. There are a lot of supplements out there that work, and some are not good, so you need to know what works for you as an individual, but also just works in general for, in our example, rowing. So the biggest ones probably, well researched, creatine and caffeine, probably 2 of the big ones. But again, if you're a junior, you really need to talk to your coach, you really need to talk to people in the know about what you should be doing or what you can be doing prior to a race. And then when you have spoken to the coach and you've kind of sorted things out, it's about testing. So yes, the research might say this many carbs or whatever, but you might find it really difficult to stomach that. So definitely not just waiting for a 2K to say, right, I'm going to have 4 gels because that's the optimum amount of carbs for me.
Try it in training before you do it,
Yeah.
whether it's on your hard session that week or you're going to do a 500 or
Yeah, so it's like
see how you react.
you've got a 2K predictor workout, for example. Try that. Your race warm-up, race fueling, etc. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Next question from Errors89. Is rowing zone 2 higher than running zone 2? Or is it based on 3 zones in total instead of 5? So lots of questions based on sort of zones. I think this question is a little bit on the side of misunderstanding what the zones are. So is the training on 3 zones in total instead of 5? That's just different types of, not different types of training, but different coaches have different models. Yeah. And so there can be, if you're using a 3-zone model, which is what I like to use, it makes it super simple to basically say easy session, hard session, middle. Whereas you use zone 5 or 5-zone model, it can kind of get a bit difficult to be able to communicate to some people, okay, I want you to train in, say, zone 3, and it's kind of hard, but like relatively easy, and that's where the confusion starts. So for me, running zone 2 and rowing zone 2 are exactly the same if you're using the same model. But where the confusion also changes there is, so for example, if I go running, my heart rate goes very high, very fast. So it's very difficult for me to hold it in zone 2. I really have to go quite slow. But on the erg, relative speeds, I can go quite quick for zone 2. So it's also understanding the intensities that you as an individual can do for each zone and how that can change per sport. If your heart rate is at, let's say, 70% running and 70% rowing, 70% swimming, whatever the activity is, then it's in the same zone. You're getting the same training benefit cardio-wise. Yes, different muscles used, so different there, but your heart doesn't know what you're doing outside of it pumping blood. Your lungs are still breathing, and so it's a case of your training benefit is the same if you're at the same heart rate. And I could talk loads about heart rate training. We'll see if there are any questions come up, but that's pretty much that based on that question. Next question from Peter D. Ergs. What are your goals or expectations for Versa, the Yam versus the Fin? Well, first of all, for those of you that don't know, I'm going to be competing this year at the World Indoor Rowing Championships. Really enjoyed it when I went in 2020 in Paris. But this year, instead of doing the 2K, I'll be doing the Versa Challenge, so a little bit of variation. One of the keys to motivation. And also, for those of you that don't know, you had to do qualifying workouts in December, and they were pretty tough workouts. It was basically a 4K and 1 minute on, 30 seconds off, and you compared to the other guys' times. And for me, I was second in qualifying, a little bit behind the rowing Finn, who obviously I'll be now competing against, and it's going to be a really interesting event to do. For me, goals and expectations, I don't really, so goal-wise, I want to finish each event, which I think was 5, and thinking, okay, I couldn't have really went much faster, or that was a good strategy, or I'm happy with that effort. I don't want to go and aim for a certain position, because that's secondary to actually doing the performance as well as I can. Aiming for a certain position, a certain outcome is a very easy way to take yourself out of the training and miss whatever's going on in regular time in daily life, but also getting to the actual outcome, even if you reach the outcome that you want to do, is an easy recipe for basically, very simply, bad mental health. You can finish an event and think, is that it? When in reality, yes, that is it, but you have to look back and it's not just that one event. So, long story short, aiming to do as well as I can against some absolute savages like the rowing Finn, who basically just did a marathon distance on the erg, sub 140, which at most people's 2K pace. So very fast, and it's great to be able to compete against people who are very fast. Next question from Gav Klein. What's your favorite boat class? Single.
Cox 4.
Another question from Elizabeth Gilmore, one of the yamsquad athletes. Biking for cross training, same time or longer? Some say 1.5 times. I would say
That's for distance.
on the longer side. So if you're doing 60 minutes on the erg, I would probably do a bit longer on the bike. But obviously, generally stick to your programming. But if you were to switch it up, I think yes, definitely between 1.4 and 1.6 times, let's say. And the reason I say that is we're on the bike now, I'm not using any of this muscle, so it means that my body's under less stress per stroke, and so to put it under the same stress per stroke, I have to push more with just my legs rather than legs, arms, back, shoulders, triceps and biceps. Another question from Key Low. How much would you recommend someone lift to become stronger on the erg? Well, before even recommending weights at all, I would recommend just erging more. The best way to get stronger and faster on the erg is to do more erging, whether that's more low intensity sessions, more mileage, or just more time spent on the erg doing high intensity or getting used to the erg. If you really want to do weights, it's not necessarily about how many times a week or amount of weights that you're doing. The biggest thing is being consistent and progressing on the weights that you're doing. So 2, 3, 4 times a week over a long period of time, weeks and months, is going to benefit you greatly, not just to make you stronger in erg, but just make you stronger in general. And then to add to that, you can do a lot of weights, but you don't want that interfering with the erg or other things that you're trying to get better on the erg at, so recovery is super key. So if you're able to do 4 sessions a week and feel like your recovery is really good for the other sessions, that's fantastic, but some people might feel like 2 or 3 times is more beneficial to them. And we've made it to the 2-hour mark, so a little bit of a stretch off the bike. Sam's on the erg for a little bit of variation. And another question from the Yam Squad. Why are you in Australia? From Manu Mickle. Well, one big reason is weather change. Weather here has been really good and able to row every day. Weather at home, about 25 degrees colder, rainier, windier, and it's at home it's hugely flooded. So even if I was at home and the weather was good, it would still be flooded and I wouldn't actually be able to get on the water. This week alone, I've done probably almost triple the mileage I did for the entirety of December, or water mileage, just purely because in December the weather wasn't very good. Whereas this week I've been able to get on the water once or twice a day and push almost 150, 170k. So makes a massive difference. Okay, we're back on the bike now for another question from the Yam Squad. One from Charlie Farrak. Best way to deal with blisters from rowing. We'll probably make an entire video on that. In fact, I have made an entire video on that. So if you want to search for it, go back in the channel. But the biggest things about blisters is keeping them clean and keeping them somewhat moist. You don't want them to dry out too much while they're in the healing process. Unfortunately for me, and the reason I'm on the bike today and not the water, as I've said, is because I didn't quite manage that with the blisters. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blisters on this hand, and one of them is causing big problems. So pretty good, but not ideal, and it can be quite difficult to stay on top of, especially if you lose control of many blisters. Next question we have, where is it? From Anna Lesdkan. You always seem so positive and it's lovely. Thank you very much. But when you have to do a 2-hour UT2, how do you not get bored? Well, I think a big part of it would be, so UT2, it's genuinely UT2. It's genuinely an intensity where you're able to almost enjoy what you're doing. So it's not like, oh, this is really hard, which makes it very difficult. But then, of course, that goes into the whole, well, that's a bit boring side of things. Sam, how would you get less bored?
Less bored, do things that make you happy.
Ooh.
Like we've got nice yummy snacks.
And it breaks it up as well. So
Breaks it up every 20 minutes, having 20 grams of carbs, which we know is 4 of these. A little bit of maths was involved there. But that, having music that you enjoy, something that's going to make you happy. Distracting, or something on the TV, or even like what we're doing now, having a conversation.
Yeah.
Because theoretically, you should be able to do zone 2 indefinitely, provided that you've got
Fuel.
carbohydrates being fueled.
And so some people argue, oh well, the lower intensity work is really boring, but it is, I think, also about changing the perception of that workout. If you're saying it's going to be really boring, of course it's going to be really boring. But if you set it up, it's like, what an opportunity today, I get to do 2 hours on the bike, erg, swim, whatever it is, and it's going to benefit me greatly.
And I get to focus on my technique.
And I get to watch a movie.
Yeah, and I get to have
snacks.
Jelly berry blisses.
Oh yeah. Next question from my girlfriend Perry. When will I be coming home? Well, Perry, not long now. A couple of weeks here left in Australia. Got a little bit of racing to do at Queensland State Champs. Not 100% sure in the boats I'll be racing in. Definitely double, definitely single. Hopefully the 8, and we'll see what else goes on. So a weekend coming up for future Yam Squad to look forward to. But that will be it for today's episode, Yam Squad. Going to finish up this bike. Going to I've dropped them all. Going to continuously fuel, finishing off. Maybe got another, we're just over 2.5 hours in. Probably going to the 3 and a bit hour mark. So a good amount of steady cardio this morning. Hopefully the hand keeps recovering, so by the next training session we're ready to go, especially for racing coming up. And if you enjoyed a little bit of a Q&A, a little bit of variation, because one of the keys to motivation, hit that like button. If you aren't subscribed, I'd really appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next episode.